I'm a broke, down on my luck assassin. A client offered me $3 million to take out some helpless, unassuming husband. I scoffed. Just some pushover husband? That's a piece of cake. But then, I snuck into the target's basement. I'd barely taken a step when a red dot appeared on my forehead. The lights flared on, and I stared in shock at a room covered in photos. The woman in all of them had the same face, mine. Before I could react, the sound of unhurried footsteps echoed from the staircase above. I instinctively turned to see a man in a gray silk robe standing at the top of the stairs, holding a fluffy white cat. The cat let out a lazy yawn, its clear blue eyes, just like its owner's, staring down at me. That face, my eyes widened in disbelief. My next-door neighbor from the tiny apartment was the owner of this 8,000-square-foot mansion? What about all those nights we spent crammed in my 200-square-foot apartment watching slasher films? I still remembered how embarrassed he looked when he knocked on my door. He said his lights were out, he was halfway through a scary movie, and he was terrified. He wanted to finish it at my place. I didn't suspect a thing. I even told him I'd check his wiring for him after the movie. Even though I'm a killer, I can't help but feel a little protective and sorry for a harmless, gentle guy like that. Besides, the man was gorgeous. The kind of guy who'd get hit on by everyone if he walked down our shady street, the kind who'd have to stay cooped up at home, a timid, helpless widower. Thinking about how to escape. Peter's lips curved into a cold smile. Too bad. There's only one door. I was going to let you live when you first set foot in the villa. But you just had to find this room, and you saw her face. Now, I can't let you leave. With a swoosh, a tranquilizer dart shot out from the shadows, so fast a normal person wouldn't have time to react. But I'm the top-ranked assassin on the dark web. The bounty on my head is astronomical. I dodged the dart in a flash, took a few running steps, and charged right at Peter. Peter had been playing the part of the meek husband for so long, he still wore a pair of frameless glasses on his sharp nose. With them off at night, his piercing, narrow eyes and the coldness within were fully exposed. Only a faint red mark on either side of his nose hinted at the difference between his day and night personas. Peter was completely calm as I got in his face, a flicker of contempt even crossing his eyes. Meow. The cat in his arms cried out as if startled and gracefully jumped from his hold. Our eyes met. I narrowed mine, my lips parting to let out a sharp whistle that echoed like thunder in the silent room. At the same time, I felt something press against my stomach, followed by a muffled thump. A silenced pistol. I raised an eyebrow, watching as Peter's brow furrowed in pain. His eyes were cold as I grabbed his arm, twisted it behind his back. The line of his back was smooth and strong, and his long, soft black hair fanned out like a spider's web, threatening to envelop everything. A large patch of blood soaked through the silk robe on his shoulder blade, like the broken wing of a butterfly. I wasn't planning on ending his life just yet. I let out a soft laugh, slowly sliding the wrist holding the gun down his spine. Kill me, and you're not getting out of here either. Peter licked his red lips, his voice trembling slightly from the pain, but he remained calm. How much did the person who hired you offer? I said, $3 million. Peter said, I can give you $10 million. Let's make a deal. In the brightly lit basement, I stood with my arms crossed, studying the photos on the walls and a large, two-person high curio cabinet in the center. It was filled with items I didn't recognize at all, a flower, a coffee cup sleeve, a charging cable, and a leather glove. As for the photos, since I rarely go out, the backgrounds were mostly the same, my living room and my bedroom. Judging by the angles, they were taken with a pinhole camera. When did he install them? It must have been during all those times he used some pathetic excuse to get into my apartment, setting up his little project when I wasn't looking. Ahem. Peter was tied to a chair, his face a sickly pale from blood loss. There's only one way out of this basement. I have guards and mercenaries stationed inside and outside the villa. If I don't come out by a certain time, they'll come down to check. Plus, the villa's alarm system is connected to the local police station. Even if you're Inghua, the #1 assassin on the dark web, you can't guarantee a clean getaway. He finished calmly, paused, and then smiled. Who sent you to kill me? Let me guess, a foreign friend named David? His dark eyes fixed on my face. I remained composed, not afraid of my identity being exposed. I was wearing a hyper-realistic mask custom made by the agency for a hefty price. I recalled the file Vivian had sent me. I didn't say anything, but I raised an eyebrow. Looks like Peter knew who his enemy was. Seeing my expression, Peter's lips curved. It seems your organization doesn't have a habit of vetting its clients. That's not very good. But that's also why we can work together. I clicked my tongue, leaning my hips against the table behind me, and said in a relaxed tone, Mr. Peter, I haven't agreed to any cooperation yet. Peter tilted his head and smiled. If your organization had looked into David beforehand, you would have found out he's been on the run from England to France. He's probably holed up in some cheap, remote apartment right now, fantasizing about you taking me out. Not only that, but under the alias David, he's also racked up over $1 million in gambling debts in California. To be honest with you, he's my half-brother. When my father died, he only left him a trust fund. He wasn't satisfied and came all the way back from overseas to try and turn people against me and fight for the inheritance. Unfortunately, he's a typical trust fund brat from a TV show. Not only did I kick him out of the country, but his trust fund went down the drain too. So he sold off his properties and cars and was persuaded to invest in California, where he lost everything. It looks like he's trying to make a desperate gamble now. First, he hires your organization to kill me. I don't have a will, so the company will fall into chaos. That's when he can swoop in, take over, and then use my inheritance to pay your fee. As for you, Ms. Inghua, Peter said gently, this whole setup needs a scapegoat, doesn't it? He's been to this villa before. While he doesn't know the specifics of the security, I mentioned to him once that the entire villa uses thermal imaging. My biometrics are programmed as the highest command. The moment it detects I have no vital signs, the villa will lock down completely, and an alert will be automatically sent to the police. No matter how beautifully a bird soars in the sky, it can't escape once it's trapped in a cage. My expression turned icy. Although I was skeptical of what Peter was saying, I had already decided to have the agency do a thorough check when I got back. If what Peter said was a lie, but he could actually cough up $10 million, I wouldn't mind helping him turn that lie into the truth. Don't talk to me about integrity. Integrity is for people with a conscience. I'm an assassin, we don't have one. You could say I was born to make this kind of money. I'm a role model for the industry. Of course, if what Peter said was true, and David dared to play games with the dark web and try to frame me, I'd personally turn him into Swiss cheese. So, Ms. Inghua, interested in a partnership? Peter's gaze fell on me, a faint hint of a smile in his dark eyes. But I was incredibly familiar with that look. It was the same look he had when he showed up at my place in a white shirt and a pink apron to cook for me. That gentle, harmless husband vibe, no one would ever believe it was an act. Peter promised to give me $10 million to turn on David and kill him, and while I was at it, I needed to retrieve a file from him. I need some time to think about it. I tapped my knuckles on the table, not agreeing too quickly. Peter smiled. Of course. How about 3 days? 3 days was enough time for me and my organization to investigate David's background thoroughly. Deal. This time, I agreed readily and, in a good mood, leaned in close to Peter. The man's features were strikingly beautiful under the glare of the overhead fluorescent lights. His thick lashes were lowered, and his dark eyes were like venomous snakes hiding in the shadows. Mr. Peter. I got closer and closer to him, our bodies almost touching. Peter's expression didn't change, but with my assassin's sharp senses, I caught a flicker of murderous intent in his eyes. Looking forward to our collaboration. I smirked, reaching out to untie him, still casually playing with the gun I'd taken from him. Now, if you'd be so kind as to escort me out, Mr. Peter. Just as Peter had said, once we were out of the basement, the villa's living room was already filled with armed bodyguards. The familiar red dot landed on my forehead, and I wasn't naive enough to think it was just a tranquilizer this time. I tilted my head, half of my face hidden in the shadows. Peter let out a muffled groan, feeling the gun at his back move up to the bullet wound on his shoulder blade. The searing pain of the pressure on the wound shot to his brain, and fresh blood seeped from the dried wound. Peter said, "Lower your weapons. I'm escorting Ms. Inghua out." The bodyguards watched me warily, slowly lowering their guns. I used the gun to press against Peter as we left the villa. The car Vivian sent to pick me up was waiting at the gate. The night wind lifted Peter's long hair. Under the streetlight, his tall, slender shadow was like a thin line, his face deathly pale, like a lingering ghost. I clicked my tongue inwardly again, a smile on my face. "See you later, Mr. Peter." Then I shoved him away and jumped into the back seat of the car. The driver in the front didn't say a word and quickly sped away, leaving a cloud of exhaust behind. "Sir." "Mr. Peter." Bodyguards and mercenaries ran out from the shadows. Peter looked down, flexing his numb, stiff arm, and said coldly, "Call the doctor and have him make a house call. Also, have someone investigate the dark web and Inghua. I want their complete files. And send a few more people to follow Stella Chin. If anything happens to her, you can all pack your bags for a sabbatical in Africa." "Yes, sir." The bodyguards and mercenaries stood in dead silence, watching their employer return to the villa in the cold night wind before dispersing to carry out their orders. Meanwhile, in the car, I listened to the synced audio coming through my earpiece, raised an eyebrow nonchalantly, and crossed my legs. "Please, Inghua, stop smiling like that. You look sinister." The driver spoke slowly, looking at me through the rearview mirror. He was dressed as a man, but his voice was an unusually sweet female one. I stared straight ahead. "Vivian, you need to follow the traffic rules." Vivian rolled her eyes, looked away, and asked, "Did the mission go sideways?" She had seen me holding Peter hostage on my way out. I said, "When you get back, pass a message to the agency. Tell them to do a deep dive on David's background. Something's up. Peter says he's a gambling addict. The deposit was probably from a loan shark who knows if he can even pay the rest. Plus, he's trying to set me up as the scapegoat." Vivian frowned, thinking. "Okay, I'll contact the agency when I get back and have them look into it." Anyone who could find an assassin organization through the dark web had to have some shady dealings. The agency only cared about the deposit and wouldn't go out of its way to investigate a client's background, but that didn't mean they couldn't find out. On the contrary, one of the agency's biggest assets was its team of top-tier hackers. Vivian and I joined the organization at 6. We schemed and scraped our way up together to become the number 1 and number 25 assassins. There was no way we were going to be screwed over by a gambling addict and an unreliable agency. "All right, go change and take the subway back yourself." The car stopped in the underground parking lot of a folk-style pub. Vivian shooed me out without a second glance. This was mine and Vivian's safe house, and also my official place of work on paper. In the organization, I was the broke, top-ranked assassin. In reality, I was just plain broke and slaving away. Even though Vivian's performance couldn't match mine, she was good at playing the stock market and owned numerous properties. "You should save some money," Vivian advised me. "Stop buying so much useless stuff." I spread my hands helplessly. "Some money looks like it's being wasted, but it's actually keeping me from dying." "You're always hovering on the edge of wanting to die, but you can't actually do it. You have to have something to look forward to, like mystery boxes, or gold, or fiery diamonds. The world wants to chew me up and spit me out, but thankfully, I'm as resilient as a mushroom." After changing, I left the pub and took a cab back to my rundown apartment building. The wind blew in through the half-open car window, and I leaned back against the seat, closing my eyes contentedly. After paying and getting out, I happened to run into the delivery guy with my takeout. $4,577? "Yep, thanks." The sizzling barbecue inside the bright orange bag was wrapped up tight, but the smoky, greasy aroma still managed to escape. Just getting off work? A familiar, gentle voice came from behind me. My heart inexplicably skipped a beat at the sound. My expression shifted several times before I turned with a smile. Peter? What are you doing downstairs so late? Peter was standing in front of the building's entrance, the motion-activated light above him casting a warm glow. He had changed into soft loungewear, with no sign of any injury on his shoulder. The fluffy white cat was nestled in his arms, and the frameless glasses were back on his nose. He smiled shyly. Fluffy wanted to come out and play, so I brought him for a little walk. Fluffy was the cat in his arms. I walked over and scratched under Fluffy's chin. The cat tilted its head back in enjoyment, purring from deep in its throat. What are you eating? Peter asked. I said, barbecue. Just barbecue? That might be too greasy and hard to digest at night. Peter pushed up his glasses and smiled. I have some noodles at home. How about I cook them and bring them over for you? I feigned refusal. Oh no, that's too much trouble for you. It's no trouble. Once I'm out for a walk, I can't get back to sleep anyway. His long fingers brushed against my own as he stroked the cat's soft fur, then quickly pulled back. Peter said, besides, you helped me change my light bulb the other day. He was referring to the day after he'd used the power outage as an excuse to watch a slasher film with me on my couch. I had come back from the orphanage, bought a light bulb downstairs, knocked on his door, and gone in to replace his burnt-out one. All right then. I smiled faintly and pulled open the main door. Thanks in advance. Peter followed me up the stairs. The 6-story climb was filled with the smell of cooking from the other apartments. Peter and I lived across the hall from each other. As I turned the key in my lock, I suddenly turned back to look at the cat in his arms and said with a grin, Fluffy, want to come over to my place and play? The half-open door revealed a dark apartment. Fluffy's clear blue eyes reflected my smiling face without a trace of guile. A look of apology flashed across Peter's face. Fluffy's tired. Maybe another time. He wouldn't let Fluffy interrupt the private world that belonged to him and Stella. Fluffy let out a questioning meow. What a shame. I patted Fluffy's little head. Well, next time then. With that, I nodded at Peter and closed the door. Normally, I would have flipped on the lights immediately and collapsed on the couch. But now, after changing into my slippers and putting the takeout on the dining table, I started scanning the room, trying to figure out where Peter would have hidden the cameras. If I were a pervert. I walked into the bathroom and felt around under the shower head. Nothing. Maybe Peter wasn't as perverted as I was. After a quick shower, I changed into a slip dress. While Peter hadn't arrived yet, I turned off the lights and started searching my apartment. I ended up finding 12 pinhole cameras. Just around the couch where I usually lounge, there were 4 or 5 from different angles. Knock, knock. A knock came from the other side of the security door. Peter's clear, gentle voice sounded a bit distorted through the heavy metal. It's me. I glanced around the dark room at the hidden camera's locations, then flipped the switch on the wall and opened the door. As light spilled out, Peter's breath caught for a moment. I smiled. Come on in. I had just showered and hadn't dried my hair yet because I'd been busy looking for cameras. My damp, dark hair was draped over my back, and a few drops of water had soaked a small patch of fabric at my waist. Peter's gaze, deep and intense, landed on my lower back. The overhead light reflected off his glasses, and taking advantage of the fact that my back was turned, he stared openly. I sat down at the dining table, where a dark clay pot sat on a heat-resistant mat. I used the broth I made this morning to cook some noodles. Give them a try. His waterfall of long hair was tied back in a low ponytail. Peter wore a plain white t-shirt and a pink, frilly apron tied snugly around his waist, making it look incredibly slim. When he bent over to serve the noodles, you could see the outline of his muscular chest, but it vanished when he stood up straight again, leaving only his gentle and attentive demeanor. He placed the steaming bowl of noodles in front of me. I didn't move. Resting my chin on my hand, I asked, We've been neighbors for so long, and I've never asked about your family. When you moved in, I heard Mrs. Sun from downstairs say you were a widower. Yes, Peter hadn't expected me to bring up when he first moved in. His eyelashes fluttered, and his pinky finger unconsciously traced the surface of the table. Can you tell me about your wife? Peter looked up, his gaze landing on my face. You should dry your hair first, or you'll catch a cold. He walked over to the bathroom as if he owned the place, found the hairdryer, plugged it in, and stood behind me, lifting my hair. I leisurely ate my barbecue under the warm blast of air, my hair being gently dried in his hands. I didn't touch the noodles in the clay pot. After finishing the last piece of lettuce-wrapped meat, I let out a small burp, and the person behind me stopped drying my hair. A hot tear fell on the back of my neck. I frowned and was about to turn around when Peter held my shoulders from behind. Then, his warm breath was against my back. I don't have a wife. I told them I was a widower because I was afraid they'd keep trying to set me up with women, you know. I have a lot of trouble with that. I moved here because my last landlord kicked me out. Peter said his previous landlord suspected him of seducing his wife, and in a fit of rage, threw all his belongings out and kicked him, penniless, to the curb. So this time, when he was renting the place, he told the landlord, Mrs. Sun, that he was a widower who was still devoted to his late wife. Mrs. Sun had originally wanted to introduce him to her niece, but seeing Peter's heartbroken and lonely expression, she dropped the idea, saving him a lot of hassle. His tears were too many, too hot. They felt like they were burning my back, and my thin nightgown was about to be soaked through. So you don't have a wife? What are you crying for? I sighed, feeling the grip on my waist tighten. I struggled a bit and managed to turn around and lift his chin. His clear glasses seemed to be fogged over with a damp mist. Behind them, his dark eyes were wet, as if they had just been washed by a spring rain. I lied to you. The corners of Peter's eyes were flushed, and his gaze was fixed on me as he said softly, Please don't be mad, okay? As long as you're honest with me, of course I'm not mad. I hooked a finger under his chin and said with a half smile, But is this the only thing you've lied to me about? Our eyes met, and it was like a hurricane tore through Peter's mind. What did she mean? What else had she found out? I glanced meaningfully at the spots where the cameras were hidden and patted Peter's cheek gently. Think carefully. Peter's pupils contracted sharply, and the corners of his eyes turned an even deeper red. I coolly withdrew my hand, yawned lazily, and said with a smile, resting my chin on my hand, I want pork rib soup for breakfast tomorrow. Okay. Peter's eyelashes trembled as he looked down, hiding his dark, intense eyes. He asked gently, Is there anything else you want to eat, Stella? Logically speaking, we were just neighbors. Even if we helped each other out, it hadn't reached the point where I could just order food from him. But it takes two to tango. I said, Whatever. I'm so tired today. Remember to close the door for me when you leave. I went back to my bedroom, listening to the footsteps in the living room, and soon, the sound of water running in the kitchen. I rolled myself up in my blankets, trying to sleep, but my phone lit up with a ding. Someone named Director Chen had sent me a photo. In a dark room, a group of cute, young children surrounded a little girl in the middle. The girl wore a crown, and in front of her was a two-tiered cake. Her young, smiling face glowed faintly in the candlelight. Ding, another message popped up. Director Chen, Mia wanted me to thank you. I stared at the photo for a long time before typing back, Happy birthday. Before I joined the organization, I was, without a doubt, the most mischievous kid at Blue Sky Orphanage. I climbed trees to catch cats and waded into rivers to catch fish. At an age when boys were still playing with mud, I was already kicking them into it. One by one, the kids would go crying to Director Chen. Overwhelmed, she would comfort them before calling me over to ask sternly, Stella, why did you kick them? Stella was the name Director Chen gave me. I was left at the orphanage gates right after I was born. The winter night had fallen early, and the sky was dotted with unusually bright stars. I said defiantly, You said girls aren't supposed to see boys with their pants down. When they were having their peeing contests, they never cared if any girls were around. I had no choice but to kick them all into the mud so I wouldn't have to see. That was the day I officially earned my reputation as the little troublemaker of the orphanage. Many prospective parents would take a liking to me because of my sweet face, but every time, some kid would rush out and call me a little hell-raiser. Even though the parents knew it was just kids joking around, they couldn't help but hesitate. It wasn't until I was 6 that I saw a girl who was being adopted leave the orphanage on her birthday. Director Chen splurged for once and bought a beautiful crown cake from the city to celebrate. I curiously went over and heard the girl laugh, "It's sweet." A group of kids gathered around, wanting a taste, but Director Chen stopped them. The cake wasn't very big. If it was divided up, the girl wouldn't get much. She was about to leave the orphanage for good, and this was Director Chen's final gift to her. On my 6th birthday, I got into a fight with a bully outside. I ended up battered and bruised, but the fat kid didn't get off easy either. On my way back, I saw half a cake in a trash can. The cake was lopsided and misshapen, but to a 6-year-old, it was an irresistible temptation. So I took it back, planning to find the candles the girl had thrown away, stick them on, and make it my own birthday cake. But I never expected that little bully to hold a grudge. He followed me all the way back to the orphanage and, in front of Director Chen, accused me of stealing his cake. I didn't. I found it. You're lying. It's mine. I left it on top of the trash can. A child's lie is always so full of holes. Director Chen looked at me coldly and scolded, "Give it back." I looked up in disbelief, tears welling in my eyes, and stubbornly insisted, "I found the cake. It's not his. My mom bought that for me." The bully said, smiling smugly at me when he saw the adult was on his side. He reached out to snatch it. I refused to let go. Finally, holding my breath, I lifted the cake high and smashed it into a pile of mush. "You!" The bully burst into tears, yelling that he would have his mom beat me to death. Slap! A crisp slap echoed through the room. The bully's crying stopped short, and he stared wide-eyed as I was hit so hard my head whipped to the side. Director Chen pressed her lips together, her gaze falling on me with a hint of pity. She opened her mouth as if to say something, but was interrupted by a man's voice. "I want to adopt her." A refined man in a white suit walked over slowly and offered me a handkerchief. "Will you come with me?" My blurry vision focused on the mush on the floor, my face numb and stinging. A moment later, I nodded. The man gently wiped the dirt and tears from my face with the handkerchief while instructing someone to handle the paperwork. I wasn't standing in the open yard of the orphanage instead, I was sitting with the man in an extended SUV. The person who adopted me was the head of the assassin organization, a handsome 40-year-old man named Mr. Wen. After joining the organization, my life became an endless cycle of training, and I lost all contact with the orphanage. It wasn't until I was 18 and could take on missions independently that I had Vivian take my first commission back to the orphanage. Vivian told Director Chen about my offer to be a sponsor and gave her my contact information. Aside from polite holiday greetings, we only exchanged brief messages like tonight's. I took a deep breath, tossing and turning in bed, unable to sleep. I texted Vivian, "You asleep?" Vivian, "Yes." Me, "Did the agency find anything out yet?" Vivian, "It's been less than 4 hours since we parted ways, and it's not an urgent matter. The investigators don't work overtime." Me, "That's great. Are you having an episode?" Me, "I just feel like I can't be lazy anymore." Vivian spammed me with a few knife-wielding cat emojis. Me, "Let's go go go." Vivian rolled her eyes and forwarded me David's address from her messages. I scrambled out of bed, got dressed, booked a flight to Florida, and left the apartment in the dead of night. At the same time, Peter in the apartment across the hall was also awake. He sat on the soft sofa, his glasses tossed carelessly on the coffee table. His thick eyelashes hid the emotion in his eyes, and he anxiously chewed on his pink nails. The thin loungewear he wore was stained with blood on the left shoulder, where the stitches from removing the bullet had torn open again. What did Stella mean by that? Did she know? The place she was looking at. The computer on the coffee table was off. If anyone had turned it on at that moment, they would have seen my silhouette flash across the screen, followed by the sound of a door closing. Buzz, buzz. The phone vibrated on the sofa. Peter ignored it, his dark eyes staring blankly at the computer. But the person calling was persistent, as if it were something important. On the fourth try, the call was finally answered. Hello? Sir, Mississippi Chin just left. We lost her. In an instant, the long fingers gripping the phone tightened. Peter glanced down at the computer, the deep-seated darkness within him spreading like a spider's web, infinitely magnified. Useless. The gentle husband's lips spat out a cold reprimand. Go find her. If anything happens to her, you can spend the rest of your life in the belly of a lion in Africa. Yes, sir. Peter hung up the phone and closed his eyes as if to calm his anger, his chest rising and falling slightly. A moment later, he fumbled for his glasses, put them on, and opened his laptop. The light from the screen illuminated his pale face, but even the reflection on his lenses couldn't hide the gloom in his eyes. Why did she run? Was she scared because she found the cameras? That question she asked tonight was probably just a stalling tactic. He should have known. He shouldn't have given Stella a chance to react. He should have just kept crying until she completely softened. He fast-forwarded the video feed, switching the view to the camera hidden in the bedside lamp. In the video, I was rolling around on the bed with my phone, then got up, changed, and left, all in one smooth motion. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Stella. Stella. The faint glow of the computer screen lit up half of Peter's tear-streaked face. He knelt on the carpet, leaning forward, pressing his cheek tightly against the image of the woman on the screen. Her soft, dark hair cascaded down her back, with a few strands winding down her neck like the veins of a tree, hidden deep underground, endlessly growing. In the orange taxi, the driver's eyes were fixed on the rearview mirror. Seeing that the persistent black car was no longer in sight, he finally relaxed. You're being followed, the driver said in a low voice. I didn't say anything. In the rearview mirror, my sharp jawline and a faint, mocking smile were visible. Looks like someone's getting anxious. Seeing that I hadn't responded, the driver gave me a questioning look. When he saw my confident demeanor, he didn't say anything more. But as I was getting out, he handed me a gun. For protection. I said, thanks, but I'm about to get on a plane. There's security. The driver. Huh, right, I forgot. He awkwardly took the gun back and waved me off. I chuckled, waved back, and walked into the airport terminal. There were fewer travelers at the airport in the early morning. After a short wait, it was time to board the flight to Florida. I glanced at my empty phone, sent a quick message to Vivian, then turned it off and walked towards the gate. It was 15 hours later when I arrived in Florida. I didn't rush to the address Vivian gave me to find David. Instead, I checked into a hotel suite and threw my phone on the bedside table to charge. The phone turned on automatically as it charged, and a stream of messages poured in. At 7:14 a.m., Peter sent me a message. Stella, are you awake? I made pork rib soup, it's almost ready. Image. At 7:22 a.m., Peter, I'm waiting at your door. At 7:24 a.m., still not awake? At 8 a.m., Stella? Following this message was a missed call. I was asleep on the plane at the time, my phone off, so of course I didn't answer. Peter, are you okay, Stella? I'm really worried about you. You left a key at my place last time. Stella, I'm coming in. I have something to do in a bit, I'll just leave the soup and go. At 8:10 a.m., Peter, Stella, you're not home. Where did you go? After that, a new message arrived every 20 minutes. I watched Peter's one-man show with amusement, my fingertips tapping on the screen, but I didn't reply. Peter quickly noticed the typing indicator. Stella? Where did you go? I'm so worried. Me, had to go out for something. Don't worry. A very cold reply. The other end fell silent. After a patient wait, he slowly typed back, "Are you coming back tonight?" No. The doorbell rang. I shuffled over to open it, typing as I walked, "You can have the pork rib soup. It'll be good for you." Watching the contact name change from kind neighbor with a 42-inch chest to typing, and back again, I burst out laughing. I could just imagine how much Peter must hate himself right now for not waiting outside my door. He might have been able to run into me as I was leaving, instead of having this cold, text-based conversation. Even if he suspected I knew about the cameras, he wouldn't dare confess and explain himself. Instead, he was putting on this whole act, testing the waters. I guessed that ever since Peter found out his men had lost me, he hadn't slept a wink. He'd probably been waiting anxiously for an appropriate morning hour to start probing with his messages. But unfortunately for him, my phone was off, so I couldn't reply. I opened the door to a hotel waiter in a black and white tuxedo, smiling warmly. "Ma'am, your gown." The waiter handed me the luxury shopping bag and then gave an elegant bow. I thanked him politely, handed him a few bills, and asked with a smile, "Could you help me find someone?" "Of course, ma'am." The blonde, blue-eyed waiter pocketed the tip, his attitude becoming even friendlier. I said, "Please find out about a man named David Wilson for me. I want to know his schedule for tonight." "Oh, of course. I'll do my best to satisfy you, but you know how big this place is. I can't be sure I'll be able to find anything, but I will do my best, ma'am." I took the luxury shopping bag and smiled slightly. "Thank you." Inside the luxury shopping bag was a long evening gown and a necklace. The hotel was one of Florida's most famous landmarks. Beneath its lavish lobby was a dazzling underground casino, a playground for the super rich. David's address was in Florida. The fact that he could afford the down payment for a hitman meant he had probably pawned something valuable. And when a gambler has extra cash, the first thing they think of is winning it all back. Peter's family was rich. Even though David was an illegitimate son, the fact that their father left him a trust fund meant he wasn't completely neglected. His lifestyle was likely that of a spoiled rich kid. So, my choice of this hotel was no coincidence. That evening, the waiter brought news. David usually had dinner on the third floor at 7 p.m., and then half an hour later, he would head down to the basement level to play some games. I changed into the silk satin slip gown and appeared in the underground casino right on time. David was easy to spot. I scanned the casino with the photo Vivian had sent me and immediately saw a disheveled man with bloodshot eyes from gambling. Number 8. 8. Oh, fuck. Although the man had just arrived, he jumped right into the game and quickly lost a large sum of money. Furious, he yanked at his tie and cursed loudly. I waited patiently. David soon lost a few more rounds. The pile of chips next to him dwindled, and his mood grew increasingly irritable. I walked over with a glass of wine, feigning curiosity. "What's going on here?" "You don't have many chips left, sir." David looked up at me irritably. His gaze suddenly froze, a flash of astonishment in his eyes. "Want to bet against me?" I smiled at him, tossing a handful of chips in my hand like a toy. David glanced back at his losses on the table, then at my face, his eyes traveling down to the chips in my hand. He let out a coarse laugh. "You should know, a loss is a loss here. No one's going to pity your tears." I raised an eyebrow. "How can you be so sure I'll lose?" David snorted and called a waiter to set up a private table. He had been soaking in the casino environment for so long he could practically read people's faces. The woman in front of him wasn't a gambler. Her eyes didn't have that do-or-die glint of a true addict. She probably saw him losing and wanted to try her luck. Foolish. But it was a perfect opportunity to win back everything he'd lost from her. "What's the game?" "How about blackjack?" "Sure." I gracefully sat down in the chair pulled out by the waiter. The 7-tiered crystal chandelier above was dazzling. The dealer kept his eyes half lowered and a smile on his face as he dealt our cards. My luck was bad. I lost right from the start. A look of I knew it flashed across David's face, and his smile was smug. The first hand sets the tone for the whole game, lady. Don't go betting your dress away later. It was blatant harassment and provocation. The dealer glanced at me. I rested my chin on my hand, signaling him to continue dealing. David's winning streak ended on the third round. A small mountain of chips vanished in a flash, and the smile on his face slowly stiffened. Looks like Lady Luck is on my side tonight. I smiled and pushed all my chips into the pot. Last hand. All in. A vein throbbed on David's temple. Under the lights, his eyes seemed to be dazzled by the surrounding luxury and extravagance. He slammed his hand on the table and stood up, his expression ferocious. I'm in. Seeing the man across from me making a desperate, all-or-nothing move, my smile grew even wider. As expected, I won the final round as well. David's hands fell limply to his sides. His brow furrowed, and he muttered something under his breath. When he saw me getting up, he lunged forward and grabbed my wrist. I have money. I have more money. Let's play again. The Yunjiang group in China will be mine soon. I tilted my head apologetically. Sorry, I need to use the restroom. Wrenching my hand from David's iron grip, I picked up the hem of my dress and walked towards the restroom. Standing in a stall, I counted on my watch as my phone suddenly buzzed with a message from Peter. Kind neighbor with a 42-inch chest, are you done with your work? Sorry, am I bothering you? I don't mean anything by it, I just learned a new dish and wanted to show you. Image. The photo was taken from above. In the center was a vibrant and appetizing borscht, but what was even more eye-catching was the sliver of a narrow waist cinched by a blue lace apron, and the reflection of AV neck and chest muscles in the silver spoon next to the soup. Peter was wearing a cream-colored knit sweater, the loose weave offering tantalizing glimpses of the lean muscle underneath. A few strands of his long hair fell across his chest, and even in the distorted reflection, you could feel the strong, nurturing mother hen vibe. I instinctively tilted my head back and typed, sorry. Sorry, but I'm the kind of woman who can't say no to a bad influence. Me, couldn't see the pecs clearly. Send another one. For my phone wallpaper. Kind neighbor with a 42-inch chest, image. But this time, after the photo was sent, there was a long silence from the other end. The man standing in the small kitchen frowned and opened the picture. His time, the camera was flipped. It was even more appetizing than the borscht. The knit sweater covered a muscular, firm chest, adorned with a cherry red nipple. His collarbones were straight, his neckline elegant and smooth. His long hair was tied up in a bun, with a few strands artfully falling loose, the extreme blackness of his hair making his skin look snow white. His eyes were bright, with a harmless, upward tilt at the corners. His jaw was sharp, and a pair of frameless glasses sat on his high-bridged nose. He could be considered a divine masterpiece. But the judges didn't give a score. The color slowly drained from Peter's face. Was this body and face no longer attractive to her? Peter still remembered the look of awe in Stella's eyes when they first met in the narrow stairwell after he moved in. Even though she didn't recognize him, that look of awe was identical, sending a subtle thrill of excitement through him. But now, had it lost its effect? I didn't mean to ignore Peter's message, but heavy footsteps, different from a woman's, echoed from outside the restroom. It was David. He had lost too much and had nothing left to wager. So, he had set his sights on me. If I died, all my chips would go to him. The stall doors were pushed open one by one. David chuckled, "Honey, where are you?" He reached the stall I was in, pushed the door, and found it locked. He sneered, but before he could make a move, I kicked the door open, aiming a sharp kick at his chest. The pointed high heel dug into his muscle, sending a searing pain through him. David slammed hard against the wall, his vision blurring. The next moment, the dark barrel of a gun was pressed against his forehead. Who are you?" David's eyes widened in terror, his gaze shifting from the gun to my cold face. He trembled like a leaf. I smiled faintly. "Hello there, Mr. Client." "Client?" David's teeth chattered. "You're Inghua." He stammered. "Why are you trying to kill me?" "I'm the client. I paid you to kill." "Shoo." I gently tapped David's forehead with the gun barrel and said with a smile that didn't reach my eyes, "I already know about your little scheme." After I landed in Florida, Vivian had sent me the organization's file on David. Just as Peter had said, David didn't have the money to pay the final installment. He was waiting for me to take out Peter so he could take over the corporation. But his gambling debts were so massive that even if he took over the Yunjiang group, he would only be able to barely pay them off, leaving no extra cash for our fee. And the thermal imaging system at the villa was real. The moment I killed Peter, I'd be facing a mountain of trouble. David knew all of this but never mentioned it to the organization. He was clearly planning to double-cross me. "No, you must have misunderstood. I have money, I have a lot of money." David's eyes reflected pure terror. He was sobbing under the threat of death. I casually took a photo with my phone for posterity and said with a merciless laugh, "Too bad. You and Peter may be half-brothers, but you'll never be as rich as him." He said, "If I kill you, I'll get $10 million. You can't do this. You have no integrity. I hired you first." David shrieked, his face turning red. "I'm a killer. What did you expect, an upstanding, law-abiding citizen with a moral compass?" I looked at him with scorn, and my contempt seemed to cut him deep. "Ah!" He let out a guttural scream and lunged at me. Bang! The silenced pistol fired, and a bloody hole appeared in the back of David's head. A rattling sound came from his throat, his pupils dilated, and his burly body collapsed to the floor. I clicked my tongue, strapped the gun back to my thigh, and dragged David's body into the last stall. After carefully wiping away the bloodstains with a mop, I calmly walked out and looked up at the security camera with a smile. As I left the underground casino, an operative from the organization was already there to meet me. The moment I got into the black Bugatti and drove away, the hotel's alarm bell started ringing. I peeled the realistic mask off my face, sent a photo to Peter from a burner phone, then switched back to our chat and replied to his chest picture. "Sigh, wearing a sweater in the summer? You must get cold easily. Need me to warm you up in my arms? Kind neighbor with a 42-inch chest, can I? Kind neighbor with a 42-inch chest, I'll wait for you at home then." A message popped up from the other number. "Very efficient, Ms. Inghua. The money will be transferred to your account by 3 p.m. As for the matter in the basement, I trust assassins aren't the talkative type, are they?" He really was two-faced. I typed, "Of course not. Thanks, boss. You're too generous." The message was marked as read as soon as I sent it. My phone screen suddenly changed, and Vivian's icon flashed on the screen. I answered the call. "Hello? Vivian, you were right. Peter is investigating Inghua's identity. But are you sure you want him to find out? In our line of work, the biggest fear is being sold out. That's why even among assassins, few have seen each other's real faces, let alone their friends and family." I hummed in agreement, looking out the window with a smirk. "Get your wedding gift ready, baby. And remember to ask Mr. Wen for my wedding leave." Vivian let out a cold laugh and hung up abruptly. After changing in the airport restroom, I received a text from Mr. Wen with his congratulations and 2 months of paid leave. Wire transfer, 88, happy wedding. Me, thanks, boss. Mr. Wen chuckled and sent a voice message. Vivian told me about David. A situation like this won't happen again. But as compensation, I'm giving you the new villa I bought in Serbia. It'll be perfect for your honeymoon. I had to marvel again at my boss's generosity. I quickly sent a few cat emojis, then pulled my hat down low in the boarding line and thought wistfully. Who was it that stole my trust fund kid life of watching fireworks in Tokyo, skiing in Switzerland, seeing the northern lights in Iceland, admiring the fall leaves in Canada, living in a treehouse in Norway, listening to the rain in England, painting in Italy, spending the rest of my days with my lover in Australia, celebrating Christmas in Seattle, and living a life of luxury in the US. Sir, we have an update on Mississippi Chin. In the cramped, old room, a man in a black suit stood impeccably at the door, reporting calmly. Where is she? Peter didn't look up. His long fingers toyed with a camera he had removed from Stella's room. A pile of them, at least a dozen, lay brazenly on the coffee table in front of him. The man hesitated. Mississippi Chin is in Florida. Florida? Peter glanced up slightly. The man said, yes. Also, here is the file you wanted on Inghua. The manila envelope contained 3 thin pages of information, detailing the life of the dark web's #1 assassin. Everything had gone too smoothly, far beyond their expectations, as if someone had pulled strings for them. All the complex hacking strategies they had prepared were useless. Peter had a clear face mask on, his eyelashes damp. When he looked down, he appeared gentle and harmless. He untied the string on the envelope and pulled out the thin sheets of paper. His eyes landed on the first line, and his pupils contracted almost imperceptibly. Inghua, real name Stella Chin, born September 6, 2001, at Jishur Provincial Central Second Hospital. Grew up in Blue Sky Orphanage, adopted in 2007, adopter unknown. Inghua, Stella was Inghua. The Inghua who had entered his basement. No wonder she had been searching for something when she got home. After seeing the basement, she knew about his dark obsession and guessed he had tampered with her apartment. That's why she was rummaging around, pretending to look for something. That's why she had suddenly asked him about his wife and said, "But is this the only thing you've lied to me about?" Buzz, buzz. The suited man's phone vibrated. He glanced at the stunned Peter and turned to answer. What is it? Okay, I understand. The man spoke briefly and hung up. Peter asked calmly, what's wrong? The man replied, Mississippi Chen's flight left Florida, but she didn't return to Huaishur City. She went to Jishur City. I see. The timer for Peter's 15-minute mask went off. He walked to the tiny bathroom, peeled off the mask, and threw it in the trash. He turned on the faucet, and cold water streamed over his fingertips. If you looked closely, you could see his hand was trembling slightly. But if you looked up, you would see the man in the mirror had a flush on his cheeks. In the eerie, dim light, his lips were bitten a bright red, and his eyes were dark and intense, yet filled with a strange sense of glee and excitement. Stella had accidentally discovered his twisted obsession, found the cameras, yet she hadn't run away immediately. She hadn't destroyed the cameras either. Not only did she allow him back into her territory, she even requested pork rib soup in the morning. Even though she didn't get to drink it, it was because she was on a mission. She had gone to settle the score with David. It wasn't intentional. She might have even known he would investigate Inghua, which is why everything was so easy. Meow. Fluffy padded silently into the bathroom, his jewel-like blue eyes staring strangely at the human who fed him, who seemed to be going crazy again. Ah, my sweet boy. Peter gracefully knelt, his water-beaded fingers stroking the cat's soft fur. He chuckled softly. Shall we go pick up Mommy and bring her home? Fluffy let out an annoyed meow and shook his fur. How rude. Was he using the cat as a hand towel? Peter, lost in his own world, didn't notice the cat's mood. He smiled to himself. Stella hates rich people, so she'll definitely be mad that I have so much money and hid it from her. But if I voluntarily transfer all of it to her name beforehand, she won't be mad anymore. I should book a flight. No, first I need to have a voluntary transfer agreement drawn up. The cat looked at the man muttering to himself, rolled its eyes in disdain, and ran out to get the man at the door to open a can of food to soothe its wounded, towel-like heart. The plane landed in Jishur City at 10 o'clock at night. I realized it had been many years since I'd last been back. Walking out of the terminal, the sight of distant, brightly lit skyscrapers and flowing traffic felt completely foreign. Fortunately, I'm good with smartphones. I randomly found a highly rated hotel with an airport pickup service, which saved me the trouble of calling a cab. The driver was a warm-hearted guy. He was about to get out to help with my luggage but paused when he saw I had none. He chuckled, "Traveling light, huh?" I nodded and took the opportunity to ask, "What's there to see in Jishur?" Lake Tai Grottos, the wetlands, and Pilu Temple are all great. Pilu Temple is for praying for wealth. A lot of young people make a special trip just to go there. Really? I said. I'll have to check it out if I have time. It was a 5-star hotel. I got my keycard, went straight to the bathroom to wash off the dust and grime of my travels, and then checked a message from Vivian. Seeing nothing urgent, I went straight to bed to catch up on sleep. Even for me, working around the clock for 5 or 6 days without adjusting to time zones was taking its toll. I slept until noon the next day. Staring at the sunlight peeking through the curtains, I stretched languidly and rolled around on the bed for a bit before I had the energy to reply to Vivian's message from last night. Vivian said Peter's people had gotten the file on Inghua and would probably figure out my destination soon. Then, she sent an 88,888 transfer with the note "Happily ever after." I replied lazily, "Thanks, you too." Vivian, get lost, I'm not into that. Pushing my luck any further would test Vivian's patience. I knew when to quit, so I accepted the money, sent a heart emoji, and danced on the edge of her last nerve one more time. Vivian was in a good enough mood not to curse me out. It was already 1 in the afternoon by the time I checked out of the hotel. Jishur, a southern city, felt like walking through a heat wave in the summer. I was wearing a gray tank top, ripped jeans, and my hair was thrown up in a messy bun. I showed up at the Blue Sky Orphanage looking completely casual. Director Chen was pushing a 4 or 5-year-old on a swing. When she turned and saw me, she was clearly taken aback. I smiled. "Long time no see, Director." Director Chen looked older than when I had left. Her hair was graying but neatly combed back and held with a black clip. The short-sleeved shirt she wore was faded from washing, and her back was slightly hunched. She stared at me, so long that I blinked uncomfortably. "Mama Chen, who is this lady?" A little girl in a yellow dress timidly tugged on Director Chen's clothes, peeking out from behind her to look at me curiously. Director Chen snapped back to reality. She's a big sister who used to be here. She's also the one who sponsors you, Mia." "Oh. Is she the sister who bought me the cake?" "Yes." Hearing Director Chen's words, Mia ran out from behind her, no longer shy, and smiled brightly. "Thank you, sister." The cake was delicious. It had strawberry filling, my favorite. "I'm glad you liked it, Mia." I bent down and patted the little girl's head. Director Chen said, "Let's go inside and talk." Blue Sky Orphanage had changed dramatically over the years. Most of the dangerous buildings had been torn down and replaced with new houses and play facilities. They had also hired many caregivers and volunteers. Only Director Chen's office remained the same, simple and old, the walls covered with cheerful, childlike drawings. "When did you get back?" "Last night." After that brief exchange, an awkward silence fell over the room. I stood in front of the wall, looking at the drawings. At the very top, I saw a faded drawing on yellowed paper. It was a simple picture of a red house and a fruit tree. The signature in the corner was faded, but I could vaguely make out the character for Chen. "Thank you for your donations all these years. Blue Sky Orphanage wouldn't have lasted this long without them." Director Chen paused and then asked, "How have you been?" "Very well. Mr. Wen sponsored me to attend a university abroad, and I stayed to work at his company after graduation. The summer weather was as unpredictable as a child's mood. One moment it was sunny, the next, dark clouds rolled in. The wind beat against the window. I pressed the light switch on the wall and faintly heard Director Chen let out a sigh of relief. The lights in the room flickered and then, with a crackle, went out completely. Director Chen got up to find the maintenance staff, but I dragged over a chair and stood on it. "Just flip the breaker, I'll take a look." Director Chen pressed her lips together, looked back at me, and then shuffled over to the breaker box and switched it off. I unscrewed the light bulb and checked the wiring. It turned out the bulb was just burned out. Are there any other bulbs? Director Chen said there were some in the storeroom and she would go get one. I clapped my hands and jumped off the chair. It's about to rain. I'll go. Where's the storeroom? Where the old cafeteria was, turn left when you go out the door. I followed her directions to the storeroom, found the key under a brick, unlocked the door, found an unopened light bulb, and put everything back before returning. I changed the bulb in a jiffy, just as the rain started to pour. Fat raindrops splattered against the window. Director Chen said, "Stay and have dinner here tonight." I saw a black Bentley with its hazard lights flashing parked at the orphanage gate in the rain. I smiled slightly and shook my head. No need, someone's here to pick me up. Director Chen followed my gaze and saw a long-haired man in a black trench coat holding an umbrella at the gate. He didn't come in, but his eyes were fixed on this room through the rain. "Is that your friend?" He'll be my husband soon. He seems like a very nice person, and handsome too," Director Chen said with a sincere smile. "You always did like good-looking ones." "Still do." I raised an eyebrow and smiled at the man, then turned back. "I'm leaving now, Director." Director Chen nodded slightly and carefully reminded me, "The road is slippery in the rain, drive safe." I nodded and declined a volunteer's offer of an umbrella, dashing into the rain. Peter ran towards me with his umbrella, but he was a step too late. I was already more or less soaked. "In such a hurry to warm up next to me, huh?" I lowered my voice, a clear smile in my tone. Peter's eyes were gentle as he looked down, listening to me say slowly, "There's a fee for warming up with me. 10 million an hour. US dollars. Can you afford that, Mr. Peter?" Peter's cheeks flushed, and his lips curved into a sweet smile. His eyes were incredibly focused as he said, "I am willing to give you everything I have. My life is the extra interest I'll pay." I raised an eyebrow. "Talk is cheap. After all the shady things I've seen you do, how can I trust you?" Peter said softly, "The contract is in the car. The voluntary gift agreement is in the car." I was momentarily stunned. A child's voice came from behind me, "Sister." Mia ran towards me, holding a child's umbrella and a piece of cake. I turned and knelt, smiling gently. "What's wrong?" Mia held out a plate with cake on it, her eyes curving into crescents. "This is leftover cake from my birthday. It's been in the fridge. Mama Chen won't let me eat too much, or I'll get a tummy ache. This is for you, sister." The cake was cold, splattered with raindrops, and lopsided from her running. It wasn't exactly pretty, and the frosting had hardened slightly from being in the cold for so long. I took it with one hand and ruffled Mia's hair. "Thank you." "You're welcome," Mia said. Mama Chen said before that the sister who sponsors us also loves cake, so for every kid's birthday, Mama Chen uses some of the donation money to buy us a cake. I smiled faintly and said, "All right, you should go back now, or you'll catch a cold from the rain." Mia looked at me reluctantly, then waved and said goodbye. I nodded and smiled. "Goodbye." She finally turned and ran back, her little umbrella pattering away. I stood up, my gaze lingering on the window of the director's office for a few seconds, then said to Peter, "Let's go, get in the car." The rain fell harder, the sky so dark it felt like the world was about to end. The partition was lowered as soon as we got in the car. The cake was placed on a small table. Peter held me, burying his head in my neck, greedily inhaling the faint, fruity, citrus scent of my perfume. For some reason, the corners of his eyes were red. "Thank you, Stella. Thank you for bringing me to the place where you grew up, for letting me be a part of your life. I don't know who my parents are. I was found by Director Chen and lived in the orphanage for 6 years. This place was my first home. Bringing Peter here felt significant, like bringing him home to meet the family. But it was just a spur-of-the-moment decision. Maybe I wanted to see an old face, or maybe I wanted to see my younger self. I suddenly remembered the photos in Peter's basement, some of them from long ago during my university days abroad. When did you start stalking and secretly photographing me? I narrowed my eyes, my hand reaching up to grip his chin. Peter's eyelashes fluttered behind his glasses. A pink tongue snaked out from between his red lips and licked my knuckles. He said softly, when you first started university. Peter said that a week into my first year at Weston University, I had helped an Asian woman on Pruitt Street. The woman was being harassed by a group of junkies. I beat them up, comforted the terrified woman, and even took off my leather jacket and put it on her shoulders on the cold, windy street. Peter had just received a message and was rushing over. We were only separated by a street. As he was crossing, I happened to get a call and left. As I walked away, I glanced at him unintentionally. A flicker of awe crossed my eyes, but I quickly forgot about it. Those guys had been sent by David, and the woman was Peter's mother. Peter had just turned 18 that year. 5 months later, his mother had a depressive episode and jumped from a building to her death. Later, Peter spent a fortune to find out what I liked. When he learned I had a thing for gentle, harmless husband types, he moved in next door to me and meticulously planned how to get close to me. You're so kind, Stella. Even though we hadn't known each other for long, you were willing to help me carry my things and even fix my light bulb. His soft lips planted feather-light kisses on my neck, stirring a malicious ripple deep inside me. All of that comes with a price, you know. I twisted around to sit on his lap, one hand pressing down on his injured shoulder, the other slowly moving down. Peter bit his lip, a gasp escaping his throat. He shook his head, looking innocent. Principal and interest. I guess I'll just have to collect the debt myself. I sighed with feigned helplessness, leaning in so close our noses were almost touching, and asked softly, Does your shoulder still hurt? I recognized you back then. I knew it was Peter, but I still shot him. Peter wrapped his arms around my waist, looking up at me with a smile. His hair, like a waterfall of black silk, seemed to weave a fine net around him, luring me in, only to entangle me layer by layer. It hurts. A kiss from Stella will make it better. I looked up at him with an amused expression, then tilted my head down. Suddenly, a strong force pulled me against his chest. Peter's fingers pressed into the back of my head, an undeniable command in his grip. The car drove smoothly through the rainy night. A sudden clap of thunder exploded by my ear. Peter said very gently, You are a nail in my skull. Love is not a consolation. It is a nail in the skull. William Carlos Williams, Patterson.